Good morning. It's March 30th here at LTV Live in East Hampton. I'm here again with Natalie, our Ukrainian local fighter front worker. And we have Matt from LTV here. Thanks again so much for helping us with this podcast to bring this to life. Just a little bit of a background, starting shortly after the first attacks from the Russian side happened on Ukrainian territory. We started this podcast just so we can kind of like bring a little bit more of a personal perspective to this. So I met up with Natalie through another mom at school, and she made me aware of Natalie's fundraiser efforts. And she now has her iLoveUkraine.org nonprofit organization is up and running. There is a website, iLoveUkraine.org. So just before we jump in, maybe a little bit of our backgrounds again, so people that haven't listened in before have an idea. My name is Bernadette. I've been a resident on the East End for the past 16 years. Time passes fast, I can tell you that. And my personal connection to this is that I actually grew up in former East Germany, so I'm very familiar with Soviet Union sort of occupation. The East Germans were definitely treated in a different way than people in the Ukraine. But I do remember a lot of stories back from my grandparents going through the war. And also if 1989 would have never happened, I would still be probably stuck behind a wall, or I would have had to risk my life to escape a country I might have not wanted to live in. So for me, the freedom came with a lot of personal freedom, the freedom of a country. So I'm gonna hand over to Natalie, and we're really interested to hear how are things back in the Ukraine. Do you have any updates for us? And I remember you were telling me just a few days back that it was your dad's birthday last week. So maybe give us a little bit of an update on that.
Yes, hello. Thank you so much for having me, Bernadette, Matt. Thank you very much for your efforts and your hard work and support. A few words about myself. I am a Ukrainian-born American. I have been in this country for 20 years, and I started nonprofit iLoveUkraine.org to help people in Ukraine. Yes, it has been difficult. It has been over a month, and it has been difficult for the whole world to watch, and extremely difficult for people to be in Ukraine. Yes. Last week it was especially hard for me because it was my dad's 70th birthday, and for 4 days I was not able to get in touch with him. And I cannot tell you the feeling. Every morning I wake up and I dial him and there is no reception and my phone call goes nowhere and I don't know what is happening. And it is 70th birthday also, and thinking of a person celebrating his 70th birthday was all his life accomplishments, which is unbelievably a lot. I'm extremely proud of my dad. In the bomb shelter, it just was breaking my heart. It was very difficult.
Yeah, I actually also were shocked when you told me that your dad, as a matter of fact, also shortly before his birthday, relayed to you that because he lives in on the 8th floor of an apartment building, and he actually stopped going into the bomb shelter because he said he's just simply too old to go up and down. There's no elevator because there's no electricity, I'm assuming.
Yes, that's correct.
And also the bomb shelter is not an inviting place for him to be. So he is actually kind of giving up, which is very sad to hear that.
It is, yes, it is very difficult emotionally and physically as well. For example, my dad and his with his wife, they live on the 8th floor of the apartment building, and every time there is an air raid, they have to run down to the basement because elevators are not working, so they have to use stairs. And I cannot even imagine doing it every 2 hours, every 24 hours, nonstop for more than a month already. And he said that his knees are swollen, and personally, I'm afraid that, he will fall down or he will be pushed down the stairs or something in a panic, because the whole building is rushing to the shelter in the basement. So it has been very difficult, yes.
Matt, I know we have a picture of Natalie and her father. If you wanted to blend that in, that would be great.
It was last time we saw each other. It was March 2020, right before the pandemic started. He came to visit us, yes. And the scarf I'm wearing belonged to my grandmother.
Yeah, that looks
Thank you.
very Ukrainian, actually.
Thank you. Thank you.
So what actually then happened? How did he spend his birthday when you finally were able to get a hold of him?
So he, well, it was no birthday, and he didn't have reception for these 4 days, and he wasn't able to charge up his phone to receive phone calls or to give me a call. Finally, after I heard from him, I felt much better, of course. And today, actually, on my way to the studio, I spoke with my mom, and she said that my city, Khmelnytsky, was bombed today. And it was very interesting because before I jumped into the car and dialed my mom, I was having a cup of coffee and watching the news. And the news were that Russians were retreating to the east, and my town where I'm from, Khmelnytsky, is closer to the west, and it was bombed last night.
Which is, I'm sharing the same impression. The news coverage is starting to fade away. It's not as prominent in the press anymore, which I knew is going to happen.
Right, yes.
I mean, people through COVID were so tired reading the same news over and over again. And then the Ukraine was a refreshing change, but it's not your neighbors, your immediate neighbors. You're not immediately affected, although we are in a way. So to hear,
Economically, we are, yes.
yes, for sure. So for me to hear that from actually a person that has the connection to the Ukraine, I mean, that's really eye-opening, and I think that's an important message that needs to be relayed. Let's jump back to what we've been doing locally and how we've been able to make a little bit of a difference.
Yes. So last week, Bernadette and myself, we had a little adventure. So our super moms volunteers helped us to load our huge van that was kindly given to us by East Hampton Airport. Thank you very much, guys.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And we loaded up the. Oh yes, we have the picture. Yes, let's show our Bernadette.
I love this photo. So we have to. This is Matt. I'm not on camera, but yeah, we have to share this photo. This is a great photo of Bernadette, as you could see on the screen, getting the Enterprise van going, and I'm assuming you guys tell us what you did with the van.
Yeah, so I have to say our appeal at the airport has been so successful that we were able to fill up the entire van with all kind of medical supplies, a lot of clothing. And so now, after the first excitement, the question that was, what are we going to do with all the clothing? So the Greek Orthodox Church in Southampton has been actually so kind to work with Natalie. And so a lot of the clothes we were able to drop off there, but then everything needs to be looked at, and whatever can be shipped needs to be boxed. It's a huge undertaking, and I know you have an army of moms. I saw it in the basement there.
I'm very grateful. Yes, it's a wonderful community to be in. Yes.
So what we ended up doing is we kind of like loaded up the truck again, because we had to also relieve the Greeks.
Yes.
And give them some space to get ready for their Easter. And so we ended up going to several churches that day, and
Hearts of the Hamptons and a Ukrainian church in Lindenhurst. Yes. And we would like to say thank you everybody who donated clothes. And we wanted to say that at the moment there is a little bit issue with clothing transportation. So we were told to hold on to what we have and hold off on asking for more clothing, and more priority would be dry food, baby products, and first aid supplies and care packages.
Okay, great. And then Natalie, let us know what's been happening locally. I know you guys been planning for an event that's coming up soon.
Yes, our board member Brittany Apley is planning with Kiera also and other moms planning a first fundraiser scavenger hunt in Southampton Village. Yes, and we were featured in the newspaper, so you can read the full article about us there. Thank you, Matt.
Really awesome. Just to see, just jumping in here quickly, but to see all that, you guys are only two people, and obviously you have a lot of help with the other moms and your husband and such, but to see all this from a relatively smaller community going all the way over to Ukraine is awesome. I mean, I was there at the, Stand with the Ukraine event. I saw you there. We hadn't met yet, but to see that people do care here,
Absolutely.
as the news coverage fades away, as you guys had mentioned, but people still care here is extremely nice to see on a human level, especially coming out of the pandemic.
Maybe also just an update, the items that have been shipped. Natalie, can you just give our listeners an insight on what's been happening with those? Because I know that's been the burning question for people.
Yes, there are two ways to ship items to Ukraine. Via airplanes and via ships. So by airplanes, it's a little bit more expensive, and by ship, it's a little bit cheaper. So that's what we have been doing so far, where we have been shipping items to Ukraine directly by boat. It takes a little bit longer, but we're working with donated dollars, so we have to be cost conscious as well.
And just to emphasize, like, first of all, there is no knowing when this situation is going to ease up. And even after there is a resolution in sight, with the infrastructure being so damaged and affected in and around the Ukraine, this is going to take some time for this country to get back on its feet. And I'm astonished how long people in the Ukraine have been able to hold out. And that's my biggest inspiration.
If you don't mind, I want to share a story that I saw over here. One sec. There's an East Hampton chef who has gone over to Ukraine.
Yes.
And he has his name is Christopher Kalas. I don't know if you know
We
him.
haven't met, but
Yeah.
I heard, yes, I read this article. It's very impressive.
So just to see, like I said, to see stuff like this, he didn't have to do this.
Right.
And to see him go back and another story quickly that I saw in New York City was a Ukrainian restaurant who struggled to stay alive during the pandemic. It's one of the only Ukrainian restaurants in all of New York City. He went from selling 600 orders a day to 1,500. People in New York, and that's, if that's their way of giving back, of going to a Ukrainian restaurant and buying food, people do care. So it is nice to see.
Yes, absolutely.
So then back to our local efforts, Natalie, what's been going on with the local schools? Because that is especially important to me, to keep our youngest fellow citizens informed on what's been going on.
Yes, lots of action on that front as well. So right after our podcast, I'm going to Southampton Elementary School, and I will work with the community club with Mr. Apley and his little members. And we're going to prepare little fundraising boxes for our scavenger hunt event. So we will decorate them, and we'll put our logos on it. So it will be fun. And next week, I'm invited already to go to the Bridgehampton School, elementary school, to talk a little bit to kids about what is happening and to spread a little bit of kindness. And kids like this, working on little projects, painting Ukrainian flags, and we usually take these little pieces of art and we stick them on boxes that are being shipped to Ukraine. And I think it adds a little personal touch to it. And I also, next Wednesday and Thursday, I will be in the West Hampton Middle School speaking also.
Very good. Let's finish this for today, but we wanted to start our earlier tradition. We wanted to continue our earlier tradition to actually finish with a section in Russian. So if people in Ukraine can actually see this podcast in one way or another, they can, if they don't understand English, they can somewhat participate in what we've been talking about. So I'm going to check out here now, and thanks, Matt, again.
Mm-hmm.
And we meet everybody next week again. Thanks so much, guys.
So I will say a few words in Russian. О чем мы говорили с Бернадет и с Мэттом сегодня, то, что наша компания уже организована, у нас есть веб-сайт, он уже почти законченный, но вы уже можете идти и посмотреть, что мы делаем. И также мы говорили о том, что происходит на Украине. К сожалению, На прошлой неделе моему отцу было 70 лет, и я не могла с ним связаться. Это была очень тяжелая неделя для меня, и я абсолютно понимаю, как тяжело людям быть на Украине, и тяжело людям также здесь смотреть на происходящие события. И мы отсюда стараемся от всей души. Мы работаем очень тяжело, мы работаем, у нас очень много волонтеров, которые помогают нам хотя бы чуть-чуть помочь людям на Украине. Также мы говорили с Бернадет о том, что я хожу по школам, и я разговариваю с детьми, и я стараюсь им показать и рассказать, что правильно и что неправильно в этом мире, и немножечко показать, как можно быть немножечко добрее. И мы рисуем рисунки, которые мы ставим на наши коробки, которые посылаются на Украину. Я хотела сказать, держитесь, ребята. Слава Украине. Thank you very much.